The sun rose gently over the coastline, painting the water in streaks of gold and soft blue. Jessica Radcliffe stood at the edge of the dock, her wetsuit snug against her skin, the cool morning air brushing her face. For years, the ocean had been her second home, a place where she felt both small and infinite. Today was supposed to be like any other training session, but there was a quiet heaviness in the air that she could not name. The marine park was still closed to visitors, and only the cries of gulls broke the silence. She walked slowly along the damp wooden boards, her footsteps echoing in the stillness. In the largest pool of the park, a shadow moved beneath the surface. It was Orion, a massive fish that had been in her care for many seasons. He was strong, powerful, and intelligent, and Jessica had spent countless hours earning his trust. She knelt down, calling his name softly, and the shadow rose from the depths until his dark form broke the surface. His eyes met hers, unblinking, calm, but with an intensity that always made her feel like he could read her thoughts. She slipped into the water, the cold wrapping around her body like a living thing. The sound of the world above faded, replaced by the slow rhythm of her breathing and the whisper of water against her ears. Orion circled her with a steady grace, his huge body moving like a current she could never control, only respect. Jessica reached out, letting her fingers trail over his smooth skin, feeling the quiet strength beneath. For a moment, it was peaceful, almost hypnotic, a connection built over years of patience and care. Then the water shifted in a way she did not expect. A ripple passed between them, too sharp, too sudden. Orion's movements changed, his tail cutting the water with more force than before. Jessica's instincts stirred, but she stayed calm, watching him closely. She had been around marine life long enough to know when something was different. From the corner of her vision, she caught sight of a second shadow deep below, larger than Orion, moving with slow, deliberate power. Her breath slowed, her mind caught between wonder and unease. Orion dipped lower, his path curving toward the darker shape. Jessica kicked her legs, gently following, but keeping her distance. The deeper she went, the colder the water became, the light thinning, until shapes blurred at the edges. That was when she felt it. A pressure in the water around her, a presence that made her heart quicken. The massive shape began to rise, its size growing clearer with every meter. It was not rushing toward her, but its approach carried the quiet certainty of something that had chosen its path long ago. Orion swam upward, brushing past her side, as if urging her to follow. Jessica hesitated, torn between the pull of safety and the need to understand what was rising from the depths toward her. The water seemed to grow heavier as the shape rose closer. Jessica felt her heartbeat in her ears, matching the slow rhythm of the creature's movements. She could now make out the glint of scales, catching what little light reached this depth. It was massive, far larger than any fish she had ever seen in the park or the wild. Its eyes were dark and deep like the sea itself, and they locked onto her with an intensity that made her muscles tense. Orion circled between her and the giant fish's body, moving in swift protective arcs. Jessica stayed still, letting her body rise slightly with the motion of the water. She knew sudden movements could trigger reactions in creatures this size. The fish slowed, but did not stop, its sheer size making the water feel alive around her. She felt the pull of its wake against her arms and legs as it passed just meters below. Orion followed closely, keeping himself between Jessica and the massive tail that swept the water in slow, powerful strokes. A swirl of sand and silt rose from the bottom, clouding the water and making the world around her hazy. Jessica could no longer see the far edges of the pool, only shifting shadows in the murk. She took a slow, steady breath, trying to read the patterns in the water. Something about the creature's movements felt different from the playful grace of Orion. This was older, heavier, each motion deliberate and without hurry. It moved again, this time angling upward, and Jessica realized with a jolt that it was no longer passing by. It was turning toward her. Jessica felt a shift in the water as the massive fish began its slow approach. Her body stayed still, but her mind raced, measuring the distance between them. Orion moved in tighter circles, now his presence like a living barrier. The creatures had emerged from the haze, its mouth slightly open, revealing rows of small shark teeth, made for gripping, not tearing. Its eyes did not blink, and its gaze held hers with an unsettling calm. Jessica's breathing grew louder inside her mask, though she fought to keep it steady. The fish tilted its body slightly, and the sunlight from above traced along its scales in shimmering patterns. It was close enough now that she could feel the pressure wave from its movements ripple through her chest. Orion darted forward, once brushing against the creature's side in what seemed like a warning. The massive fish paused for a heartbeat, as if weighing the challenge, before continuing toward her. Jessica began to rise slowly through the water, Orion matching her ascent, while keeping himself between her and the approaching shape. The light grew stronger with each meter, but so did the shadow that followed beneath. It was no longer just a presence in the depths, it was a force that seemed unwilling to let her go. The surface was still a few meters above, but it felt impossibly far. Jessica kept her movement slow, letting the water carry her upward in gentle lifts. Below her, the massive fish moved with steady purpose, its long body swaying in the dim light. Orion's path tightened, his broad fins slicing the water as he positioned himself directly between Jessica and the rising shape. The creature did not speed up, yet every motion brought it closer, closing the space between them with silent certainty. Jessica's chest tightened, not from the air in her lungs, but from the weight of knowing she was no longer in control of this encounter. The sun shimmered on the surface, above, casting broken patterns through the water. For a brief moment, those shifting lights passed over the massive fish's head, and she saw the deep scars along its side, pale lines that told stories she could not guess. Orion gave a sudden, powerful kick of his tail, and surged upward, bumping Jessica gently, as if to urge her toward safety. She obeyed, her arms pulling in slow, even strokes, but her gaze stayed fixed on the shadow below. It followed unhurried like a tide that could not be outrun. The water around her felt charged, each ripple a whisper of something ancient moving just beneath her reach. Jessica broke her gaze from the shadow, only long enough to glance at the surface, still shimmering but distant. Her arms and legs moved in quiet rhythm, each motion careful not to provoke the massive fish below. Orion swam alongside her, his body tense, his movements sharper than before. The scars on the creature's side flashed again as it rose, a silent reminder that it had survived battles she could not imagine. Jessica felt the water press against her skin in slow, heavy waves, as if the entire pool was aware of the encounter. The fish closed the distance until its outline filled the space beneath her, a vast shape that seemed to bend the water around it. Its eyes lifted toward her, holding the same unbroken stare. Orion cut across its path, forcing the creature to shift slightly, but it never stopped rising. The light above wavered and rippled as though the sun itself was holding its breath. Jessica pushed upward, but the current from the massive tail tugged at her legs, slowing her progress. She could hear the faint, low sound of water displaced by the creature's size, a deep rolling pulse that echoed through her chest. Orion swam between them again, his body brushing hers, as if to remind her she was not alone. Still the shadow beneath followed, unyielding, as if the water itself was carrying it toward her. Jessica could feel her muscles burning from the effort to rise through the dense water. Her lungs protested, but she forced each breath slow and measured. Orion pressed closer, as if sensing her fatigue, lending silent support with each powerful kick of his tail. The massive fish beneath moved with deliberate patience, its enormous body shifting the water in wide arcs. Jessica saw the patterns of light dance across its scales, shimmering with colors she could not name. The closer it came, the more the pool seemed to shrink around them. She tried to gauge its intentions, but the creature offered no clue, only the relentless certainty of its presence. Orion nudged her gently toward the surface, urging her to keep moving while keeping his own body between her and the giant fish. The pressure of his movement pushed against her chest and legs with each passing moment, the water growing heavier and more alive. Jessica's mind raced, trying to remember every safety drill, every instinct she had learned over years of working with marine life. The shadow below followed without hurry, yet every beat of its motion carried weight and consequence. Her eyes searched the surface above the rippling sun and the line of the dock, far too distant for comfort. She had begun to swim with confidence and calm now. She realized that this encounter was testing her in ways she had never imagined. Jessica's arms ached with each stroke as the surface seemed just out of reach. Her chest tightened with every inhale, but she forced herself to remain calm, focusing on Orion beside her. The massive fish below moved steadily, its dark form a constant presence in the murky water. Every pulse of its tail sent ripples through the pool, rocking her gently yet insistently. Orion circled once more, brushing against her side to keep her aligned and safe. Jessica could see the glint of its eyes in the dim light, filled with a silent intelligence she had never witnessed. She rose another meter, her hands breaking through the first hints of sunlight filtering through the surface. The creature followed her upward, its vast body rising slowly, like a tide that could not be stopped. Jessica felt the water press against her from all sides, the weight and power of the massive fish around her. Orion stayed close, forcing her gently in the right direction, while keeping a vigilant watch. The surface now shimmered clearly above, a barrier between the calm of the air and the uncertainty of the depth below. Jessica knew she had to reach it, yet the pull of the shadow beneath reminded her that this swim had turned into something far more dangerous than any training session before. Jessica felt her arms trembling as she pushed harder toward the surface. Her lungs screamed for air, but she forced each stroke slow and steady, keeping her focus on Orion. The massive fish below moved in perfect rhythm with the water, its sheer size making every movement a force of nature. Orion nudged her again, brushing against her shoulder, urging her to keep ascending. The sunlight above grew brighter, illuminating the swirling patterns in the water. Jessica could see the outline of the dock, faint but reachable, and her heart surged with hope. The shadow beneath followed, unwavering its presence, a reminder of the danger that still lingered. She felt the pressure of its massive body push against the water around her, displacing it with waves that rocked her gently. Her legs kicked with all the strength she could muster, each movement drawing her closer to the surface. Orion stayed alongside her, never straying far, shielding her with his own body. Jessica's mind raced, calculating every movement, trying to gauge the intentions of the immense creature beneath. The water around them seemed alive, charged with energy and silent power, as she rose meter by meter toward the sunlight above. Jessica broke through another layer of water, her face tingling as bubbles escaped her mask. Her chest burned with the effort, but she forced herself to stay calm, focusing on Orion by her side. The massive fish below followed steadily, its enormous body shifting the water with deliberate power. She could feel the pull of its presence, in every stroke a silent pressure that pressed against her limbs. Orion swam closer, nudging her gently, guiding her upward with each kick of his tail. The sunlight above shimmered on the rippling surface, illuminating her path and giving her hope. Jessica's fingers brushed the faint glint of the dock just ahead, and her heart leapt with the possibility of safety. The shadow beneath moved with unwavering patience, each motion slow yet full of undeniable strength. Her legs kicked harder, her arms slicing through the water with all the energy she had left. Orion stayed between her and the massive fish, keeping her shielded as she climbed toward the surface. The water around her felt alive, every ripple a reminder of the force that followed. Jessica could sense that the swim that had begun peacefully had now become a test of survival, and courage unlike any she had faced before. Jessica felt the sunlight grow stronger on her face as she neared the surface. Her chest heaved with the effort, each breath shallow but determined. Orion pressed close, as always circling to keep the massive fish at bay. The shadow beneath moved with steady persistence, its size immense and its presence undeniable. Every stroke toward the surface became a struggle against the pressure of the water and the pull of the creature below. Jessica's fingers reached the shimmering barrier, where air and water met, her hope surging. The massive fish followed every movement, its dark eyes locked on her, without haste or threat. Orion nudged her again, guiding her toward the safest path. The waves above broke lightly, reflecting the sunlight, and painting the pool in patterns of gold. Jessica felt a rush of relief knowing the surface was within reach, yet the shadow below reminded her that the encounter was far from over. Her arms moved faster, cutting through the water, her legs kicking with renewed strength. Orion stayed unwavering by her side, his presence steadying her as the massive fish continued its silent pursuit. Jessica's mind focused only on the climb, the safety, the unknown of the deep behind her, and the relentless force beneath her. Jessica's hands broke through the surface of the water, and she gasped a sharp breath of air. The sunlight felt warm against her face, and the sound of the world above returned in muffled waves. Orion circled her quickly, keeping the massive fish below, and check, his movements precise and protective. The shadow beneath stirred but made no sudden moves, its presence immense and constant. Jessica kicked with all her remaining strength, moving toward the edge of the pool where safety awaited. Her chest burned and her lungs ached, but she refused to let fear take over. The massive fish followed silently, each motion deliberate, pushing the water around it in powerful currents. Orion pressed against her side, one last time urging her to reach the dock. Jessica's fingers grasped the edge of the pool, her arms pulling her body up inch by inch. The sunlight reflected off the water in bright patterns, blinding her momentarily as she strained to reach solid ground. The shadow beneath shifted slowly, its immense form visible just below the surface. Jessica's heart pounded. She could feel every beat as she pulled herself higher, guided by Orion and driven by the need to survive. Jessica's arms trembled as she hauled herself higher along the edge of the pool. Her legs kicked weakly behind her, but she refused to stop moving. Orion swam alongside her body, brushing hers in a steady rhythm, keeping the massive fish below at bay. The shadow beneath shifted closer, moving with a slow, deliberate grace that made the water churn. Jessica's chest ached with every breath, her muscles screaming for relief. She could see the dock above now clear and within reach, yet the presence below reminded her how fragile her position was. Orion nudged her, gently urging her to push harder, to climb faster. The sunlight danced across the rippling surface, illuminating every movement and casting the shadow of the massive fish below. Jessica's fingers found a firm grip on the dock, and she pulled herself inch by inch, feeling the strength return slowly to her arms. The creature beneath followed every movement, its dark eyes unblinking, as if studying her resolve. Jessica's mind raced with thoughts of survival, each one driving her to keep moving and never let go. Orion stayed unwavering by her side, a silent protector in the rising tension of the water. Jessica's shoulders burned as she pulled herself higher toward the dock. Her legs flailed weakly in the water, but she forced them to kick with every ounce of strength she had left. Orion stayed close, circling her as the massive fish beneath shifted slightly, keeping its distance, but following steadily. The sunlight above glittered on the water, illuminating the ripples made by the giant shadow below. Jessica's fingers found another solid hold, and she heaved her body upward inch by inch. The pressure of the water around her seemed to press harder, as if the massive fish were testing her resolve. Her chest ached with every breath, but she kept pulling herself higher, letting nothing distract her focus. Orion nudged her side again, guiding her movements towards safety, the instinctive bond between them giving her courage. The massive shadow lingered below, moving slowly and deliberately, its size immense and powerful. Jessica's mind worked through every training drill, every survival tactic she had learned as she struggled to reach solid ground. The dock above felt impossibly far, but with Orion at her side, she refused to give in to fear. Her arms burned and her lungs screamed, but she knew that each pull brought her closer to escape and to the safety she so desperately needed. Jessica's fingers gripped the edge of the dock tighter as she heaved her body upward. Her arms shook with exhaustion, but she refused to let go of the solid wood beneath her. Orion stayed beside her, circling closely, keeping the massive fish below at a careful distance. The shadow moved with slow purpose, its immense form a reminder of the danger lurking just beneath the surface. Jessica kicked her legs, weakly trying to push herself higher inch by inch. The sunlight danced across the water, highlighting every ripple made by the massive shadow. Her chest ached with each breath, but she focused only on the dock and the safety it promised. Orion nudged her gently with his head, encouraging her to keep moving. The massive fish followed steadily, its dark eyes unblinking and unyielding. Jessica's muscles burned and her mind raced with every lesson she had learned from years of training with marine life. The edge of the dock felt closer now, within reach if she could just summon the last bit of strength left in her body. Orion pressed close once more, keeping the creature beneath in check as Jessica pulled herself higher toward safety. Jessica's hand slid along the wet wood of the dock, searching for secure grip. Her arms trembled from the effort, and her legs felt like lead beneath her. Orion circled closer, keeping the massive fish below at bay, his movements precise and protective. The shadow beneath moved slowly, following her every pull through the water. Jessica could feel the pressure of its enormous body shifting the currents around her. She drew a deep breath, forcing her arms to lift her higher inch by inch. The sunlight above reflected on the rippling water, revealing the dark form of the creature below. Her chest burned and her lungs ached, but she refused to let fatigue take over. Orion nudged her side, gently reminding her that she was not alone. The dock was just above, now solid, and within reach, if only she could push a little further. The massive fish lingered beneath its immense presence, pressing against the water with quiet weight. Jessica summoned every ounce of strength in her arms, and legs or mind focused solely on the climb to safety. Orion stayed unwavering beside her, shielding her from the shadow beneath as she pulled herself higher toward the edge of the dock. Jessica's fingers dug into the edge of the dock, her arms shaking violently with the effort. Her legs kicked weakly in the water, trying to propel her upward. Orion stayed close, circling her in a protective pattern, keeping the massive fish below at a careful distance. The shadow beneath moved with deliberate slowness, its immense form creating ripples that pressed against her body. Jessica drew a deep, ragged breath and lifted herself another inch towards safety. The sunlight above glimmered on the water, casting fleeting patterns over the dark shape beneath. Her chest ached and her muscles screamed, but she refused to give in to fear. Orion nudged her again, urging her to push higher inch by inch. The massive fish followed steadily, its dark eyes watching her unblinking from below. Jessica's mind raced with the memory of every drill, every precaution she had ever learned. The dock felt closer now, so close that if she could just hold on, she would be safe. Orion pressed beside her, giving a final push toward the edge of the dock, while the shadow lingered beneath the surface. You said, "Continue from where you stopped. Do not change the character's name. Please avoid special characters and punctuation in text. Also, do not add pointers in the end of lines. They'll not end the story," ChatGPT said. Jessica's hands finally found a firm grip on the dock, and she pulled with all her remaining strength. Her arms burned and her legs trembled as she hoisted herself higher. Orion stayed close, circling and nudging her side, keeping the massive fish beneath at bay. The shadow moved slowly below, its enormous body shifting the water with quiet power. Jessica's chest heaved and her breath came in sharp, shallow gasps, but she kept pulling herself upward. The sunlight danced on the rippling surface, illuminating the dark form beneath. Her fingers grazed the edge of the dock, and she inched herself closer with trembling strength. Orion pressed against her side, once more urging her to the final stretch. The massive fish followed beneath silently, its presence immense and imposing. Jessica focused only on the solid, with above her the promise of safety within reach. Her arms strained with every motion, but she refused to surrender to exhaustion. Orion circled protectively as she pulled herself higher, each inch of victory against the relentless weight of the water and the shadow below. Jessica's fingers curled tightly around the edge of the dock, her arms quivering from the effort. Her legs kicked weakly in the water, trying to give her just enough lift. Orion stayed close, brushing against her side, keeping the massive fish beneath in check. The shadow below moved with slow, deliberate grace, its immense form rippling through the water. Jessica drew a shaky breath and pulled herself higher inch by inch. The sunlight above flickered on the surface, painting patterns across the dark shape beneath. Her chest burned with each inhale and her muscles screamed, but she refused to let go. Orion nudged her gently, urging her toward the final stretch. The dock was so close now she could feel the solid surface beneath her fingers. The massive fish lingered beneath silently, its presence pressing against the water in slow, rolling waves. Jessica summoned the last of her strength, her mind focused entirely on the climb to safety. Orion pressed against her side one final time, guiding her toward the edge as she pulled herself higher inch by inch. Jessica finally hauled her body onto the solid wooden planks of the dock, her limbs shaking with exhaustion. She lay there, gasping for air, the cool morning breeze a stark contrast to the heavy, pressured world she had just escaped. Orion swam to the surface, his dark eyes looking up at her with a knowing intensity. Below him, the massive, scarred fish lingered for a moment, its form a vast, silent shadow in the water. Then, with a slow, powerful sweep of its tail, it turned and disappeared into the depths, the water settling back into a gentle, rhythmic calm. The only sounds were the cries of the gulls and Jessica's own ragged breathing. She had faced something ancient and powerful, and with Orion's help, she had made it back to the sunlit world, forever changed by the encounter in the deep. Ask ChatGPT.